Star Wars and video games go together like Star Wars movies and online Twitter fights. With such a rich and lore-heavy universe, it's no wonder that people are eager for more ways to explore it. And there are loads of them. Strategy games, space combat games, massive multiplayer battles, hack and slashes, even racing games.
Remember Super Bombard Racing? Yeah, that was a thing.
You name the genre and there's likely a Star Wars game to go with it. Except point and clicks though. I guess LucasArts wanted to keep that side of the company separate. Anyhow, the Dark Forces / Jedi Knight series is the one that I grew up with. Specifically, Dark Forces 2 and Jedi Academy, but I did play all the others too. This is Kyle Katarn, a man whose middle name cannot be said in polite company. He's the original badass of the old pre-Disney universe, and his deeds and personality seem to have been scattered across a variety of new characters. I miss this guy's bearded ass dearly, but in the first game, his ass wasn't bearded. I should have rewritten this bit of the script. Star Wars Dark Forces was a first-person shooter, or at this point, a Doom clone, released in 1995 by LucasArts using their Jedi engine. We've actually met the Jedi engine already, by the way, since I talked about Outlaws previously, the second game to use this engine. But since then, fan-made sourcepods have actually made some major strides. Introducing the Force engine, which has been created with the goal of being compatible with both Dark Forces and Outlaws, and even eventually including a level editor. There's quite a bit to iron out first. I mean, this is still the pre-release version, but Dark Forces is actually playable here, at native resolutions beginning to end without any major issues from what I could see.
And that's so much more preferable, you know, when compared to the tiny DOSBox screen.
It's something I've been waiting for a good long while. So I reckon now's the time to delve into Kyle Katarn's explosive debut, and the beginning of the Dark Forces / Jedi Knight series. The idea to create a Star Wars first-person shooter was inspired by Doom, as some fans had made Death Star levels as mods, and it worked. So LucasArts wanted to capitalize on that idea. And while initially Luke Skywalker was the hero of this game, they settled on creating a new character to give them more freedom.
And thank goodness for that. Imagine a world without Kyle Katarn. I am looking at you, Disney. Give him back.
The plot of Dark Forces revolves around the mysterious Dark Trooper project, with the Empire aiming to create an army of more powerful droid troopers. And yes, those Dark Troopers, they did originate here, but they have since resurfaced as part of The Mandalorian and feel quite ruthless there. But then Luke Deepfaker sliced them up and, you know, it is what it is. It's strange to see so much of the new stuff borrowing from the old stuff, but I'm not gonna complain. The old stuff is good, and this series of games is pretty cool.
Anyhow, with all that said, let's delve into Dark Forces.
Each level of Dark Forces begins with a briefing, telling you your objectives and giving you some tips for the level ahead. I would recommend reading these since otherwise you might not know where you're going. Sometimes they explicitly show you the thing you need to find as well. But here the gist is quite simply receiving the Death Star plans for the Rebel Alliance.
It's pretty funny that Kyle Katarn's level 1 is fetching the Death Star plans. So yeah, this was the story in the old Legends universe.
For the Rogue One team, retrieving the Death Star plans to give to Princess Leia was the most important day of their lives. For Kyle Katarn, it was Tuesday. The secret base is guarded by troops of stormtroopers and Imperial officers, which are enemies you're going to see a lot of, and they're pretty straightforward. And to begin with, we have a couple of options weapons-wise. First of all, there's the Briar Blaster Pistol, which is an accurate and dependable weapon. See, I always like when pistols feel useful and don't get outmatched by the weapons you get almost immediately. For instance, many of the stormtroopers carry E11 blaster rifles, you know the ones, and these are fast-firing but less accurate than the pistol. So essentially, this means we have a weapon that's useful at short range, and a weapon that's more useful at long range. I like that. These two weapons almost never run out of ammo as well, since stormtroopers drop energy units which replenish its supply, and there are plenty of stormtroopers to go around.
Some people see a stormtrooper and they think enemy. Kyle Katarn sees a stormtrooper and thinks ammo resupply.
Structurally, these missions are about what you'd expect from a Doom clone. Clearing out enemies, finding switches and keys to advance, that sort of thing. It's pretty standard. Dark Forces doesn't break out of that mold, but it doesn't need to. This is a formula that works. And before you know it, you found where the plans are being kept.
This is too easy. Now to get to my ship.
Yeah, you'd think they'd guard the plans more effectively, especially since... yeah, that. Either way, that's the end of Mission 1. And after this, we get an animated cutscene with a beautiful rotoscope Vader. Look at that cape swish. Anakin, baby, you haven't lost a step.
The Emperor has approved your test demonstration, General Mock.
We're also introduced to the game's primary antagonist, General Mock. After the destruction of the Death Star, plans were devised for a new threat. One which isn't just the Death Star but again. And no, it doesn't count as an original idea if you just put Death Star cannons on Star Destroyers. No, this is the Dark Trooper project, and these bad boys are ready to do some damage. The Dark Troopers find their way to Talay and lay waste to the people stationed at TAC Base. It's up to Kyle now to find some evidence of these new troopers, as well as restart the hydroelectric generator. You receive this mission from none other than Mon Mothma, who briefs the aloof Kyle on the subject.
Interesting. This looks like it could be a normal Imperial attack, except for those sounds.
Very perceptive, Commander.
Mothma explains that the information that they have about the Dark Troopers comes from the Imperial defector Crix Madine. And oh yeah, that's some 70s hair if I ever saw it. I love it when Star Wars does 70s hair. I mean, it was a product of when it was released, obviously. But in order to stay faithful, you sometimes see modern characters with 70s hair. I really love that. I won't bore you with any other details about TAC Base though. This is another really solid level. Again, nothing groundbreaking, but there are some interesting moving platforms and some water you can hop through. The buildings themselves really managed to create this really destroyed vibe with limited resources as well. From corpses crispier than Owen and Baru to doors that barely work. Still, the objectives are pretty simple to complete, restarting the generator and finding a discarded Dark Trooper weapon.
Why did they leave it here?
But there aren't any extra enemies to talk about yet. We still just have Stormtroopers and Imperial officers after all. The Dark Troopers can wait. This mission does introduce the main structure for a lot of the game though, which is going in, doing an objective, and then getting out via your ship. Sometimes more enemies will spawn for the way out, which is the case in this particular mission. But once you return to the Moldy Crow, you can just end it. It feels weird to say, but I kind of dig the backtracking. You need to familiarize yourself with the level so you can navigate your way back. And trust me, they only get more complex from here. One thing that did set Dark Forces apart from its contemporaries was the use of 3D models. Incredibly rudimentary 3D models, but nonetheless, they are 3D models. It's mostly used by mouse droids, turrets, and Cal's ship the Moldy Crow, but it's quite nice, it's cute. It doesn't look good, but it was 1995, and I still dig it. Mission 3. Now we're looking for our next lead in the Dark Troopers, a man named Moff Rebus, who is an Imperial weapons engineer, and his hideout is in Anout City, which is...
It's a sewer level. Oh lord, is it a sewer level?
And we're introduced to a fair few new things here. First of all, new enemies. A couple of droids make their first appearance here. The interrogation droid, the training remote, and the probe droids.
You know the probe droids. They're the floating ones, they have the long arms and they go meow 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 meow. I like those guys.
And of course, as this is a stinky sewer level, we also have Dianogas. If you don't know the name, it's the creature from the trash compactor in A New Hope, and this place is littered with them. It might as well be one giant trash compactor. They hide underneath the gunk and pop up to attack you. And this is probably a good point to discuss the health system in Dark Forces. You see, you actually have two life bars, shields and health. Shields protect you from blaster fire, but not physical attacks. So while melee-based enemies aren't as much of a threat if you keep them at a distance, they can be trouble if they catch you off guard, because they just go right through your shields. As for the level itself, it can be a little bit confusing at times. But generally speaking, you just need to go through different paths and hit switches to open up other paths.
If you approach it methodically, it shouldn't be too much trouble, but it is annoying.
In fact, it reminds me a lot of the Sawmill level from Outlaws, but not quite as frustrating as that one. You can definitely tell some of the same designers worked on both games though. Oh, I forgot to mention these guys, the Grands. You'll be seeing quite a few of these as the game progresses, and these dudes love to toss thermal detonators. What can I say? Grands love grenades. And yes, you can get yourself some of these as a weapon. They're pretty decent. As a fan of Blood's Dynamite, I don't think those will ever be surpassed as a throwable explosive, but these aren't too bad. They fulfill roughly the same function, if a bit trickier to use. It isn't too long before you find Moff Rebus, who is just sitting there smiling. He has no animation or anything, he's just happy to be there. Also, the game isn't cruel enough to make you wade backwards through the sewer. Thank goodness for that.
Jan, I found Moff Rebus. I'm ready to get out of this mess.
You're the boss, Kyle.
By mission 4, you're going to be getting the hang of the general structure. Most of them are just go to a place, do a thing, and sometimes leave the place. In this one, we're finding a metal sample of the Dark Troopers at an Imperial research facility, and it's a pretty fun and complex level which also introduces a few new things once again. First of all, a new weapon, the Imperial Repeater Gun. This is a weapon that's best used at a distance as it fires quickly and accurately. It's essentially a better version of the blaster rifle, but uses the rarer ammo type of power cells. It also has an alternate fire mode that shoots 3 projectiles at once, albeit a bit more slowly. I didn't get a lot of use out of that mode, but if you're surrounded suddenly, it can help a little bit. The next thing this level introduces is one of my least favourite enemies, ceiling turrets. They shoot you fast, they hurt a lot, and they're pretty often easy to overlook using a basic 3D model rather than a sprite. I can't tell you how many times in this game I was caught off guard by one of these because they were hard to spot and lost a sizable chunk of my health out of nowhere. These things even take more hits than the average enemy. They're annoying and I don't like them. Anyhow, the other parts of this mission worth mentioning are the more puzzle-esque elements of the game.
For all intents and purposes, this is still LucasArts, and they were cited as wanting to merge the adventure game genre with first-person shooters for this game.
This comes in the form of doors with codes and switch puzzles. The door codes are usually found on dead enemies, and you can find the symbols in your inventory. It's easy to overlook that you even have an inventory since it's not relevant for the first 3 levels. Most shooters from around the same time have items like this activate automatically, or just be easily accessible through the hood. It's not bad, it's just something that might confuse you a little bit if you didn't already know about it. The other thing, the switch puzzle, is something you'll come across quite a bit. I mean, technically there was some of this in earlier missions, but here you have to gain access to this item you need, and it takes a bit more brain power than you'd expect to figure out the right sequence. Either way, that's the research facility. Good mission. It turns out that the metal we found in the facility is called Frick. Not you. This is a PH Frick, which for all intents and purposes is a stupid name. But this is Star Wars after all. And of course this metal is being mined by the Imperials somewhere, specifically a red moon in the Groma system. And the objective this time instead has you dropping something off instead of picking something up.
Explosive!
The blood moon of Gromus gives you a red haze over everything, creating a pretty cool atmosphere for this mission. It's also littered with enemies, which might be a problem, but I did come across this. Weapon Supercharge. Oh my! Weapon Supercharge!
Yeah, that works pretty well.
On top of that, we're also given the Geron Fusion Cutter. I am loving these names, by the way, which fires slow but strong green energy projectiles, again using power cells as ammo. And the alternate fire also allows you to fire 4 projectiles at once. This firepower does come in handy after planting the explosive charges, since then you'll meet an early iteration of the Dark Trooper, the Mark I. Fortunately, these guys don't have guns yet, so they just charge at you like a 1984 Terminator, which, yeah, it doesn't make them any less scary. In fact, they are somewhat unsettling. Either way, they're not too bad to take down. And leaving the mines isn't too bad either.
Consider these mines closed for business.
You might have noticed that I haven't mentioned what happens when you die in this game, and that's true, but I just hadn't died at this point in the game yet. Don't worry, the time will come. It turns out that the Imperial spy Crix Madine, who told the rebels about the Dark Trooper project in the first place, has been captured and imprisoned at an Imperial detention center. So of course, good old Mr. Katarn is on the job. This level is one I found, personally, a little bit confusing. Some of the rules about certain mechanics are unclear, but I'll get into that in a moment. But the biggest screw up I had in this level involved this elevator here. There are these doors in the elevator shaft which seem openable, and they are, but they're not meant to be from the inside. Somehow I thought I was supposed to open them, and eventually I did manage to after many attempts. It leads to this back area with some extra supplies. Now normally you need a key to get into this area, so if you don't have the key, you can't get out, because the door you used to get in is now blocked by the elevator.
Essentially, I soft locked myself. Fun.
And the way I escaped? Well, this is a good time to bring up how dying in Dark Forces works. You might have noticed this number here. Rather unusually for a first-person shooter, this is how many lives you have. If you die and lose a life, you don't reload a save though. You simply respawn at a checkpoint. And you actually can't quick save in this game. It's not an option at all, but even without it, it feels pretty easy most of the time. Most deaths will come from carelessness, but even then they're not that punishing. Perhaps I should have been playing on hard as opposed to medium, but oh well. Anyhow, I escaped the elevator softlock by blowing myself up and respawning outside.
Kyle Katarn can destroy the laws of physics to escape confinement. It's canon. Or rather, legends now, I suppose.
The part I found most unclear about this level though was these force fields, the rims of which flash when you can't get through them, but you can go through when they're not flashing. I didn't know this, and every time I attempted to pass they were flashing, so I assumed they had to be disabled somehow. That's what led to much wandering back and forth and my entrapment in an elevator back room. The rest of the level isn't difficult to navigate, and Crix Madine can be easily found.
Okay, Jan, I've rescued Madine.
Don't hang around. Let's get out of here before any more troopers arrive.
Crix Madine gives the rebels more info on our old pal General Muck. As a side note, it's also fun to see another mention of the Clone Wars in media that predates the prequel trilogy. This particular mission has Kyle seeking out a smuggler ship at Ramsey's Head docking port, on Cal Ceti, and placing a tracker on it so the rebels can locate the Imperial robotics facility. What this means is that this one has a mixture of Imperial and alien enemies, including the introduction of the Gamorrean Guard, the lovely green piggy boys who just deserve better, honestly. Gamorreans only wield an axe, so they're not a huge threat here, unless they sneak up on you and just chew straight through your shields. If you're careful though, you can pretty much just punch them to death whenever they turn up.
Kyle Katarn has no fear.
Other than that, I don't think there's an awful lot to say about this mission. It's pretty straightforward. It may be called deadly cargo, but I don't think it's that deadly. Mildly perilous cargo perhaps, but definitely easy to deal with.
Tracking device is secured.
Picking up the signal. Looks like we're done here.
So, who had an ice level on their bingo card? This is where the robotics facility is located, and Kyle needs to take it down, using explosives as per usual. Also, the words ice level might worry you, and yes, it is very slippery. Oh dear. Oh, never mind, I just fell onto some ice cleats.
Huh. Well, it's no longer an ice level.
Yeah, if you get these cleats, you don't slip and slide anymore. So, yeah. This is another one though that can be a little bit tricky to navigate. There are lots of hidden pathways that aren't always easy to spot. A lot of stuff that would normally hide a secret path in an FPS game is the essential path here, and it's not always the best design, I think. Like, I end up wandering around trying to find where I need to go, only to realize, oh, I needed to go behind here and look around the corner. Great. As this is a robotics facility though, when you do find your way in, there are conveyor belts galore and machinery to dodge. A little bit like that sequence in Attack of the Clones, actually.
Luckily, Luckily, Kyle drinks enough milk so that a crusher only hurts a little bit.
Another hazard here is in the room where the sequencer charges need to be placed. You see, the Imperials have been using hazardous chemicals here, and you'll die without a mask due to the overwhelming fumes. The briefing does warn you of this, and a mask isn't too difficult to find, but unfortunately I didn't know the button to put it on right away, so yeah, that. Still, once the mask is on, you're good to go. It's a very simple problem to deal with, but that's not the only problem, of course. Here we get our first real taste of the Dark Troopers in action, as they come out to play once the charges are set. The Dark Troopers here carry an assault cannon and can fire mortars at you too, as well as possessing a jetpack to launch towards you. All in all, they do live mostly up to their reputation. I say mostly because I have far too much ammo for my more powerful weapons, and there's also a weapon supercharge here.
So yeah, not really an issue.
There is also one of the earlier prototypes lurking in the vents, but again, supercharge. And boom, another key Imperial target destroyed. Next up, we find ourselves on one of the more iconic Star Wars planets, especially for hives of scum and villainy. It's Nar Shaddaa. Here, Kyle is searching for evidence of Imperial involvement among the various smugglers here, and you know what that means, more alien enemies. And we have a new one with a new weapon, Trandoshans. You know, the type of alien Boskers. And these fellas carry concussion rifles here, a weapon you can get yourself on this level. I'm not entirely sure how to explain this weapon, as it might be a quirk of this unfinished source port, but I'm pretty sure it creates a powerful hit-scan blast? Oh, I also had the mortar launcher in my inventory at this point. It launches mortars. Pretty cool. There's a lot of verticality to this level, which, considering it's the vertical city, is to be expected, but I do really like that aspect. You've got to change up your strategy a little bit when Grands are constantly throwing detonators at you from above, and I respect that. There are also quite a few mines in this level, which turn up quite often from this point. The mines are annoying. They detonate when you go near them, and the only other way to deal with them is by throwing a detonator at them. Luckily, you do get plenty of detonators to use, but it does feel like a bit of a waste. I guess it's not if you're not dying, but I want to blow up bad guys with them. And sometimes the mines are hidden around corners and just blast away a chunk of your health without you having much of a chance to react. You can actually get some of these mines for yourself, but I never found them that useful, honestly. Still, it isn't too long before you fight your way through to the Imperial evidence necessary with this blue computer chip. But things don't go quite to plan. Kyle and Jan are captured by none other than Jabba the Hutt, who is upset at this interference with his business.
Jabba? What have you done with Jan? If any harm comes to her, I'll personally shove my blaster down your slimy throat.
Oh, he's so cool.
Yacha need you.
Jabba's revenge might actually be one of my favourite missions in the game. Stripped of his weapons, Kyle must once again build up an arsenal so he can find Jan and escape. But first, Jabba has dumped the hero in a pit with a Kel Dragon. Kel Dragons are these creepy looking giant grey lizards, and unfortunately we don't have any guns to fend it off.
Well, we don't have any guns, but Kyle does have guns, if you know what I mean.
Punch the Kel Dragon to death. Beat it up. I'm not joking, you can do this. Functionally, it's just a big Gamorrean guard. and you can just beat the ever-loving crap out of these beasties if you want to. This only failed me once because I got stuck, but honestly, it's totally doable and not that difficult to beat them up. Just Kyle Katarn things, you know? The rest of this level, on the other hand, is a decent challenge and perhaps the most challenging the game ever gets. I really dig it. It's exclusively alien enemies working for Jabba, and the explosives, concussion blasts, and axes can do a number on you if you aren't careful. I don't have a huge amount else to add other than the fact that this one is just a lot of fun. It feels like a nice break from the more Imperial-focused missions up until this point.
Thanks, I thought I was done for.
No time for hugs. Let's get out of here.
With the blue Nava card reacquired, it's back to business on the planet of Coruscant. Again, before the prequels. This is Coruscant during the Imperial occupation, which is neat. Neat because I get to shoot space Nazis again. And at this point, they're throwing everything at Kyle. But check this out. I've discovered you can just keep moving and jumping and you'll be mostly fine.
No Imperial is safe from B-hopping Kyle Katarn.
This level has some fun areas, although it does continue the problem of the critical path feeling hard to find, often stashed around corners and such. In fact, I get so caught up in looking for the right way to go, I end up stumbling into various areas intended to be secrets.
I feel like the intended path shouldn't be harder to find than the secrets. Maybe that's just me.
Oh yeah, and at this point you will also have the assault cannon, the weapon that the Dark Troopers carry. You know, I'm disappointed that there's no special name for this one. It could have been the Darbek Dark Energy Cannon or the Phasmos Phantom Assault Cannon. Come on, come up with something spicy. But no, it's just Assault Cannon. Just feels a little bit mundane. But anyway, those Dark Troopers, they're here too. But the Assault Cannon just melts these guys. Who would have thought that they'd be weak to their own weapons? Still, while they can be dangerous, no Imperial force is as horrifying as this upcoming puzzle.
Oh dear God, this puzzle.
You essentially need to open and close specific doors to reach the center of this complex. But it is very confusing, and there's a lot of trial and error which takes a significant amount of time. I spent a good 15 minutes of my life just opening and closing doors to figure out where I needed to go. Now, I get the desire to blend puzzles with FPS action, but I don't think this is the way to do it. It totally grinds the action to a halt. Still, once you get the objective sorted, you need to head back to Jan. But something isn't right.
Kyle, something strange is going down over here. Get back here. I mean it. Oh no, Kyle, you better look out. I just saw...
What or who did Jan see? Well...
That's right. The fearsome bounty hunter himself, Boba Fett.
He was technically teased earlier, by the way, but I just didn't mention it. I wanted to keep the surprise a little bit. And going along with the president of the original trilogy, he's kind of a pushover. He tried his best to fly menacingly at me, but I just circle-strafed around him. Poor Boba. Who would have thought he'd get overshadowed so easily? Don't worry, my guy. I'm sure it won't happen again. From here, the plan is to smuggle Kyle aboard a ship, which will go to the Super Star Destroyer the Executor, and then onto the Arkhammer, a production facility. At this point, there's not a lot left to add. The game throws a lot of what it has already introduced you en masse, in a pretty solid level that's very round. Lots of round areas in this one. Also Imperials, and Dark Troopers, and some aliens. You know, for good measure. This one doesn't have too many moments of getting lost, but there is this one bit with a really slow-moving platform. So that's fun. Still, it's pretty straightforward to get Kyle where he needs to be. The penultimate mission aboard the Executor is pretty good. It evokes memories of the original trilogy pretty well, specifically A New Hope. And again, plenty of enemies, but there is one issue. This one is short. It's very short. As in that door puzzle a couple of levels ago, that took me longer than this level. On the whole, it's about 10 minutes long. Hardly a mission really in comparison to the other ones here. I guess though it's just a breather before you go on to the actual final mission. Now this is more like it. The final mission of Dark Forces has every Imperial force at its disposal to throw at you. Enemies, turrets, mines, even the Crushers are back. Everything here feels designed specifically to be deadly and a bit scary. I mean, I was fine having had 6 lives ahead of time, but it's not like I wasn't using them here. Had I not collected a fair few beforehand, I might have actually gotten a game over here. There are plenty of opportunities to die in this one. I imagine this game would have been much more challenging if it operated on a save system rather than a live system. As it stands, it's just too easy to stock up on them. The Arc Hammer even has a couple of puzzles to figure out, and ones that aren't too bad or time consuming either. The one that sticks in my head is this one where you need to align a path through this area. It's pretty clear what you need to do from the outset, and pretty simple to figure out how to do it. The last area has a few Dark Troopers to deal with, but at this point you have so much firepower that it's barely a concern.
You might be asking if there's a final boss, and oh yes, there sure is.
It's been a long time since I've challenged a man to battle. I'm glad my opponent is so worthy.
General Mock makes an appearance here, wearing a set of Dark Trooper armor with some extra bells and whistles on his side. But I mean, look at how much ammo I have for the assault cannon. Yeah. With the final charges set and the general defeated, you can make your way to a lovely little rudimentary model of an Imperial shuttle. Look at how cute this thing is. Oh. Darth Vader is disappointed, but notes that Kyle is strong with the Force. A little teaser for the future there. And Kyle gets a lovely medal for his services, of course. Hell yeah.
And that was Star Wars Dark Forces.
I won't pretend this game is perfect, it's not. It's slightly messy here and there, and definitely too easy at points, but again, maybe I ought to play it on hard mode in future. And I do think that sometimes the level design is a little bit more convoluted than it needs to be, but when Dark Forces hits, it hits. It's a solid shooter from LucasArts that I found very enjoyable to play through, even through its flaws. The weapons are fun to use and the enemies are fun to fight. Plus, it's just great to finally have this game under my belt. Like I mentioned before, I have had more experience with the various sequels, honestly. I grew up with the Raven Software games, mainly Jedi Academy, and I played a little bit of Dark Forces 2 in my youth as well. Dark Forces 2 has FMV cutscenes, by the way, which is an extra level of fantastic. Hopefully it won't be too long before I get around to that one.
But this original game is one that escaped me, and now that I've played it fully, I do like it. I think it's good. And it introduced Kyle Katarn to the world, so you have to respect it purely for that. My boy Kyle. I should probably go.